Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order, please. Mark, are there any public speakers?
Good afternoon, Commissioner Schwartz and Commissioners. Yes, there are 3 speakers today, public speakers. The first speaker is Jason Anthony.
Good afternoon, Lawrence. Nice to see you again. I will suggest to you that you started actually 4 minutes early. It's 1:26. And you said 2 minutes early. Second of all, we want congestion pricing. Because if this agency said for already over a year that we needed to charge cars that travel south of 61st Street, why we're not seeing action and forcing people to pay more, and more. And I wonder why we are seeing cities like Chicago offering discounts to incentivize ridership. And I wonder why Bob Ferran doesn't even consider that. Because he's controlled by Andrew Mark Cuomo? Maybe so. Yes. But like Lawrence Schwartz, Linda Lacewell, and Bobby Mojica, they're controlled by Andrew Mark Cuomo, and they don't want incentivize ridership, and they don't want to put a gas tax like in New Jersey, and that's why they don't have a fare increase, and we have a biannual fare increase. And that's why we have to pay more. We want to pay less. And Lawrence, we want to see you in the subway once and for all. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. The next speaker is Andy Pollock.
Good afternoon, Officer Ferran, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It is really interesting. We're all back together in this boardroom for the first time since February 24th of last year. So, I'm here to talk about congestion pricing today because if you are not aware, there was a survey that came out 2 weeks ago from a university in Texas claiming that New York City overall has the worst congestion of any metropolitan city in the entire United States. We beat out Los Angeles. And I've been to Los Angeles, and I've been stuck on the 5 freeway going to Hollywood when I was a kid. Now, over the years, I noticed the Long Island Expressway increase becomes a problem when I have to sit in traffic going all the way to the Queens-Nassau line for leisure. So this congestion pricing has got to get done as soon as possible because I'm just sick and tired of sitting in all this traffic. It's not right, you know? I mean, the whole point of congestion pricing, yes, is to, help with commuter funds down the line, but I want to see a benefit in and out of borough. I want to help tourism in Long Island. So I'm hoping within a year from what the mayor said last week that we can get this done because I was pleased to hear from President DiCorenzo earlier that it is happening. So we have a whole year, and I want to hear more discussions about it. And more importantly, I'm hoping maybe in the fall there'll be, more details about what can be implemented because I know this congestion pricing charge is supposed to start below 60th Street in Midtown. So I'm going to yield my time. You all have a great August recess, and I will see you all in September. Take care.
Thank you. The final speaker is Charlton D'Souza.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlton D'Souza, President of Passengers United. So, guys, we need congestion pricing passed now because the MTA needs those funds. So, you guys need to do your job and get the Mobility Review Board going. Also, Atlantic Ticket and also Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and New York City Transit discounts. People who ride the Long Island Railroad, a lot of them can't afford it. And with the pandemic, we're trying to get riders back. So it is so important that we have city ticket, kept overnight. Weekdays, we introduce a city ticket. And we also have Atlantic Ticket extended to Penn Station overnight and on weekends. And we make the Atlantic Ticket, the weekly unlimited, should be like $45 or $50. By doing that, you're going to change the whole dynamic of public transportation, and you're really going to help people out. And in terms of other things, why is it that the MTA board wants to get rid of our station agents? I love and I respect our station agents who work at New York City Transit. We need cash in the booths. They need to be able to make MetroCard exchanges for an unlimited MetroCard or for like a reduced fare MetroCard or paper ride. And why is there such a huge backlog at the MetroCard Customer Service Center? Some people said they're waiting 3 to 4 months to get a replacement MetroCard downstairs. So we need more customer service centers. And you guys have to understand that Omni, I personally don't want to give the MTA my bank card information because when I see people on the bus holding up their bank cards, anyone who has a camera or whatever can take a picture of that. It's very, very dangerous. I don't suggest that. So we need a prepaid Omni card. When it comes out, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. That concludes the public speakers.
Thank you, Mark. Look, before we start our meeting, I want to raise one issue with the committee because I want to head this off. And I don't think I'm the only one on the committee that feels this way. I think everyone on the committee probably feels this way. I've been a vocal opponent about the biannual fare increases that the board every other year has to vote on. I was actually there when we first adopted this in Albany when I was Secretary to Governor Patterson. And never liked it then, and I still don't like it now. And I've been very transparent in my objections. I even came up with an alternative fare increase plan a number of years ago that didn't go anywhere, but I've raised my objections as well as other board members have. I don't think at this time and place, raising fares on any New Yorkers is appropriate. At a time when we need to encourage increased ridership, raising fares does the opposite. It's going to be an encouragement to not to increase ridership, and possibly to decrease it. And we really need to look at our fare structure in its totality and figure out a way and come up with ideas to come up with a more equitable and fair structure for our riders. We've talked about changing the structure for off-peak versus peak for our commuter rails. We've talked about other kinds of structures for New York City bus riders and New York City subway riders. But it's all been talk. We have to take the talk and to turn into action. The city of New York and the state of New York has received billions of dollars in federal support. We have a new mayor that's going to come into office. I believe it's going to be Eric Adams. We should be working with Mayor-elect Adams, the new council speaker, the new council board members. We should be working with our state legislative partners and looking at various ways to generate revenue to support this agency. I believe with Mayor-elect Adams and with this additional federal funding he's received, Commissioner Jones has raised this many times, we can put together a robust fair fares program. I really feel that the current administration has not really gone out of its way and made a real robust effort to really promote this. And I think that every low-income New Yorker, every working poor New Yorker should be aware of this program and should be and receive it, so they can use it to get to work or get to a doctor or wherever they need to go. And I also think by putting together a real robust program, it's going to help us address the fare evasion problem that we have, because people are evading fares because of the lack of affordability. So I think there's many things that we could be doing, working with our new elected mayor, a new elected speaker to city council and members, new elected city council members, as well as working with the assembly and the Senate. We've raised issues, I raised issues about maybe a surcharge on Airbnbs. We have, tourism is coming back. And before COVID, we talked about how do we get the tourism industry, the tourists that come here, to pay more of their fair share rather than the everyday New York City resident that depends on mass transit to get from place to place. Now's the time. Now is the time to figure it out. Now is the time to work with everyone to come up with the best and brightest ideas, to come up with a new way of structuring fares. Now is not the time to raise fares. And this board is going to be put in a position, because the original recommendation was to have a fare increase kick in November, which means this board at its September meeting would have to take an action. And what I'm suggesting, and I'm happy if the Finance Committee wants to make this recommendation, but what I'd like to do is for the Wednesday board meeting is to make a motion that we are not going to take an action on raising fares, that we're going to work with all our legislative elected partners and work internally as a board to figure out a fare structure that makes sense, that is sustainable, that is fair, that will encourage ridership and support our economy, and not just do the, as we've done in the past, the typical across the board biannual fares. So I don't want to wait to the last second for us to have to take this up and address it. And because we may or may not meet in August, I know right now we're not meeting in August. There's some interest in maybe actually having a meeting in August and not waiting till September. Putting that aside, I think it's important to let New Yorkers know, whether you take the commuter rail or you ride a New York City bus or subway, to know now that for the remainder of this year, you're not going to see a fare increase. So I want to put that out there before we start the meeting. If other board members have an opinion, if you guys want, if the commissioners want to, take a vote to so that the board knows that the Finance Committee feels strongly that we should not raise fares for the remainder of 2020, but we need to come up with a plan for 21, but we need to come up with a plan to find ways to replace that lost revenue in 2022. Now's the time to work on this, between now and maybe by the time we pass a budget. And again, working with the Senate, the Assembly, but also working with the new incoming New York City. I really think there's real opportunities with the Fair Fares program that we haven't seen, as well as there's opportunities in other places. So that is what I want to put on the table for the committee here today. And if you don't want to take an action, I will raise it Wednesday at the board meeting.
So, go ahead, Dave.
Larry, I'd like to strongly support that. I think it's a great idea. It would be embarrassing after the billions we've seen coming to the city, state, and MTA to suddenly raise fares. But it's also, when we did our original research that led to the Fair Fares campaign, we were estimating conservatively that about 600,000 people would be eligible for it. At the moment, we're in the 250,000 people who have taken advantage of it. I think the relative lack, in this case, of the city in advertising this program has impeded it. I have already reached out to the mayor-elect or potentially mayor-elect on this issue. I think his position on equity, particularly in the outer boroughs, we're going to get much stronger support on this. So yes, I think the fair fares is part of the solution. It can reach another $250,000 easily if we really push it. We've also been approached by another think tank, Center for Urban Future, talking about a special dispensation of some sort for CUNY students, who basically, in many cases, fall into the catchment area of not having a lot of money, but also spend somewhere between $1,000 and $1,500 a year in just transportation costs. And these are not rich people, either in the 4-year or the 2-year institutions. So I think there are a lot of ideas out there that don't necessarily burden the MTA, but is a shared burden of a number of instrumentalities. So I would strongly support something like this.
No, so Larry, I agree. I don't think any one of us on this committee, much less the MTA board, wants to see the fare increase take place. But I agree with you. We need to put together a plan. And before we do that, I think, we have a fiduciary responsibility to everyone that we take it to the next level. So I don't know if this can get done before Wednesday, or do we wait, and do it September? I mean, or just delay it? Can we possibly delay it? I don't know if we can. Like, why is there an action needed in November? Just because we delayed it from February to November? Is that what we did?
No, there's an impact.
I would defer to counsel who's sitting over there or
Right.
to Bob, but my recollection is we held public hearings.
Right, and we pushed it back 6
We agreed to raise
months.
the
Right.
tolls
Right.
on our bridges, but we deferred
Right.
taking an action. So I just want to make sure it's hanging out there that either we agree that we're going to take no action, if that's the way to go. I want to make sure that there's no one that can legally challenge whatever it is we do or don't do. So if we need to take an action, let's take it. If we don't need to take an action, then we can just take no
So
action.
that's my question. What, do we legally have to take an action?
No requirement to take.
So there's no November time? Okay. Okay.
At some point between the time of the public hearing and any fare increase, that factor is going to get looked at, but there is no deadline, no timetable.
So if we don't act, the fare increase doesn't go into effect?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, all right.
I still would
Thank
like, yeah, that's fine, but I think the public should know.
No, totally.
Where the
You want
board's
everyone,
head's at.
yes, everyone should know and plan.
So first, I, like everyone else has been saying, I support your proposal. And just, I do want to piggyback on a bit, because I think that the other point you raise is the real important effort to make an in-depth, deep dive into the issue of fares, how we're thinking about fares. And you tied it to fare evasion, which I think is right, and because we've been talking about it forever, for years, that I've been in, many years before I got there, of how we tie those things together. I do think, I would like everyone to think going forward, whether that should be one of a number of things, of let's say 2, 3, 4 items that we really look at in depth. Certainly the discussion about how we're moving forward on the capital plan and congestion pricing seems to be another item that is really worthy of an in-depth conversation and thinking, just like you talked about for fares and fare evasion. I think the whole issue of the hiring and the issues of bottlenecks in terms of the hiring plan and how we do it is something that's worthy of an in-depth conversation. Overtime is something we've been talking about for years and needs an in-depth conversation about that. So I just would like to take your idea and say, let's maybe do it 3 or 4 times and really focus, as opposed to what Jano described as a bevy of material that we get every month. And you said, let's have a summary. I think part of the summary is the focus on a handful of items that the board should really be actively involved in, and we should be finding new solutions for them.
absolutely agree on holding it off when we are thinking about this plan to make sure that we include paratransit in this as well.
I absolutely support your idea, Larry. This is a time when people are making changing decisions about how often they're going to go to work, how they're going to do that. If we were to raise fares, we risk losing these people permanently. They may make a decision that they will then commute by car permanently or another vehicle, and we don't want that. In addition to the Airbnb surcharge, I hope you're also going to look at a gas surcharge. Gas prices vary by day of week, by whatever gas station you go to. You know, if there was so many cents per gallon, people would not even feel it. So I would hope that that would be one of the considerations. And if we are going to look at alternate sources of funding, which obviously prudently we need to do, and you're setting up a subcommittee on that, I would really like to be part of that. Thank you.
I agree with everything that my fellow board members have said, and I think the gas tax is a great way to go.
Okay, thank you. I guess anyone else? Okay, we'll move on then. Thank you. All right, so next we have the approval of the June 23 minute, June 23rd minutes. May I please have a motion to approve and a second?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor? Minutes approved. Mark, can you take us through the work plan?
Certainly, Commissioner. Yes, there's one change to the work plan. Per your request, the agency fare evasion reports have been removed from the Finance Committee work plan. However, the Long Island Railroad and Metro North fare evasion reports are included and continue to be included in the Joint Railroad Committee work plan and published in those books. New York City Transit fare evasion report was already on a quarterly cycle. It was not scheduled for this month anyway. That will be presented in the New York City Transit Committee upon the request of that committee. That covers the work plan.
I am planning on September meeting to request the appropriate people come in to address the Finance Committee on fare evasion.
The next item on the agenda is typically Budget Watch, but there's no Budget Watch this month due to the release of the July financial plan. Bob Foran will be presenting the July financial plan at the joint session on finance on the board on Wednesday. Next, we have Finance Watch. This can be found in Section 5 on page 13, and Patrick McCoy will take us through that.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, on page 13 of Director's Desk, you'll see Finance Watch. Just a few transactions to report on here. Most recently, at the end of June, we remarketed approximately $155 million of transportation revenue bonds in two subseries. And as you can see here, we issued the bonds as floating rate notes using the secured overnight financing rate, or SOFR, as our base index. And as you can see, we achieved very attractive results here with the bonds that were remarketed with an April 1, 2024 date, with a 67% of SOFR plus 33 basis points, and the longer maturity of November 1, 2026, with an interest rate of 67% of SOFR plus 43 basis points. It's a very attractive variable rate funding that we received in that transaction, which was led by Jeffries, one of our senior managers. We do have some transactions coming up. I'll just point these out, that there's about $146 million of 2005 series bonds that need to be remarketed, and we'll be replacing an existing letter of credit with PNC Bank with a replacement letter of credit from Barclays Bank. And we do that. We solicit the banks every time we need to remarket to make sure we're getting the best bank, the cost of the bank liquidity facility. So that one will be coming up. Turning the page, we have about $148 million that will be done, have to be done in August. Also, transportation revenue variable rate bonds, and Barclays also stepped up to take these bonds and provide a direct pay letter of credit with those, and they'll also serve as remarketing agent. In the fixed rate market, we have about a $450 million issue coming up. Also in August, and this will retire outstanding transportation revenue bands, or what we call bond anticipation notes. Those notes mature on September 1st, and we need long-term finance them. So we've appointed J.P. Morgan together with Special Co-Senior Managers Rice, Academy, and Stern Brothers, representing our MWBE and SDVOB firms, respectively. And that we'll report on that transaction when it prices in the market. Lastly, we have a fuel hedge that was priced on June 29th. About 2.8 million gallons of ULSD was secured at an all-in price of $2.06 per gallon. Happy to take any questions on any of this.
I noticed on page 4, it has
Sure.
May, Finance Committee, May 2021. Is that incorrect? It doesn't matter to me, I just saw that.
I don't, which reference,
The heading, Finance Committee, May 2021, then it lists.
oh, that's a mistake.
Okay.
Apologies. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, we'll correct that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the MTA headquarters and all agency items. There are 2 action items. Pat is very busy today. He will introduce those and present them.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. The first item for your consideration is approval of support for the refinancing of the Empire State Development TIFIA loan for Moynihan Station, Moynihan Train Hall. Just to give you some background on this, the board did approve back in 2017 our participation in this transaction. We provide credit support to the TIFIA loan. Because interest rates continue to go lower, Empire State Development has an opportunity to refinance that TIFIA loan at a lower interest rate and pull more proceeds out to deal with final costs associated with closing out the project. So this is before you here, and it is recommended. There's a second staff summary. If you want me to take that up now, I'll go ahead and do that now. This is the approval of TBTA sales tax revenue obligation resolution. This would be a new resolution that will secure the city portion of sales taxes that the legislature devoted to the CBDT capital program lockbox. In the first year, the state fiscal year 19/20 was $170 million, and that amount grows annually by 1% by statute. And what we're introducing is a credit that will enable us to lever these tax receipts 1-for-1 to support 20 to 24 capital program projects in the transit and commuter system. We're very excited about being able to introduce this new credit, and the way it would work is once this board approves it, it would go to the CPRB for state approval at the CPRB level. It would come, assuming they approve it, it would come back to the MTA board, and we would recommend at the September meeting, ostensibly, a ratification of that resolution so that we could be in a position to issue bonds or notes by the end of the year for those 20 to 24 projects.
Pat, you might mention the amount of bonding that you think you could do with this credit and what contribution that would make to this 20 to 24 capital program.
Sure, Bob. Yeah. The revenues that we're looking at here, again, $170 million in the base year, growing by 1% annually. We're estimating that we can generate about $3.7 billion in proceeds by bonding using this resolution that's before you today.
Are those 20 to 25 capital projects identified, or are they just unnamed as of yet?
Unnamed as of yet. Remember that the CBDT capital program lockbox is intended to fund transit and commuter projects broadly as long as they're in the approved program.
Other questions? I'm going to make a motion to approve both items.
I second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Both motions pass.
Mr. Chair, on the ESD item, I'm going to recuse.
Commissioner Lacewell is going to recuse herself.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Mark?
Commissioners, next on the agenda are the procurement items, and Kavesh Iyer is here to present those.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. MTA headquarters has 4 competitive procurement actions totaling $153,176,220. The first action is an award totaling $131,244,005 to Ozone Park Lumber to deliver building and construction supplies on an as-needed basis. This was a competitive RFP and the 10th category of maintenance, repair, and operation supplies being awarded. This MRO implements a category management approach, and this contract is the first of an MTA enterprise-wide procurement for building and construction supplies. These orders will be made through the MTA marketplace. The next action is a competitive award totaling $4 million to Miller Advertising Agency to provide an all-agency classifieds, legal, and recruitment services on an as-needed basis. The third action is a competitive award totaling $6,232,215 for as-needed environmental and industrial hygiene consulting services. We have 3 class awards will be made to D&B Engineers and Architects for all agency environmental consulting services, Gallagher Bassett Services for industrial hygiene consulting and laboratory services to Long Island Railroad, and to Day Engineering for integrated environmental and occupational health and safety consulting services for Metro North. The last item is a modification to a contract with Bias Corporation to perform necessary upgrades to the MTA's PeopleSoft ERP system. The total amount of this action will be in a not-to-exceed amount of $11.7 million. There are no competitive actions nor ratifications proposed this month. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does any board member have any questions on any of the 4
Yeah, the
procurement?
PeopleSoft one. I think there was some concern, at least in discussion, that this particular software is out of date and that we're pouring $11 million. I think, actually, it raises questions. I think Neil particularly raised concerns about this one.
Commissioner Jones, I had a offline discussion with Kavesh, Rav, our Chief Technology Officer, and Paul for about 45 minutes and grilling them on the need for the PeopleSoft. And I came away from the end of the conversation that this was a legitimate purchase, that it was needed, that while they are working vigorously to get us into the 21st century, they need it. The workforce cannot go to a completely brand-new system. This will bring us to a place where we can begin to use other new, better systems out there and get us moving in the right direction. So I am now in support of this
Right, Paul,
procurement.
and if I may, Larry, Paul, wasn't it to bring the systems back up so then you can go to a work day and say, come,
Right.
you know,
It's-
help us?
It's the first step of building back our HR IT systems, because the state of repair right now is not good. We need to clean up data, and we need to fix our processes. And when you put better data and better processes into a new system, the transition is much cleaner, much faster, and less risk.
Just one other question. The 3-year time horizon seems pretty long. Is there any way to expedite this? That's another 3 years before we start the next stage. Is there anything we can do to get this moving faster?
Right. The good news is we're going to get functionality within, as soon as the technical upgrade happens. So we're going to get applicant tracking as well as some other features that'll help us with recruiting, right away. After that, again, the data needs to be cleaned up. It's a pretty significant process. Believe me, I want it as much, if not more than you do, to go as fast as possible. And you have our commitment to go as quickly as possible. And if we need anything else, Commissioner Schwartz reassured us to not be shy about coming back if there's some points we could accelerate.
Commissioner Lin?
So I would then like to add this to our list of in-depth conversations, because HRIT is something that we have all agreed is critically important. I think we all saw it for a first time a couple of days ago, and Larry, you were strenuous in your sentiment at the time. I'm glad you had your 45-minute in-depth cross-examination on the subject. But it seems to me I would like, as the whole board, or I'd like to participate in hearing more of how we're going and whether 3 years is the right timetable. And I'm willing to go along with the idea we shouldn't hold it up at this point. But I do think we need much more in-depth conversation of how we're moving forward on this.
Yeah, and I would just say in defense of Paul and Rav and Kavesh, not that they need defending, in having my conversation with them, Paul brought on a gentleman whose name is escaping me.
Robert Choi.
Right. This guy, I think he's the real deal. He gets it. I think he's going to help move us in a new direction, and they understand the urgency of speed in moving forward in a very fast pace and on parallel tracks of really modernizing our operation, because one of the problems we have as a board, let alone as an agency, is our inability to make good management decisions because we either don't have the ability to collect certain data analytics, or we can't take the data analytics that we have and put them in a form or in a way that is usable to make smart, intelligent decisions. So I think they all get it, and I think they're all rowing in the same direction to get there sooner than later. Anybody? Commissioner Herman?
Just want to clarify, this will also take us to be standardized across the agencies in our HRT, right?
Right. I mean, part of this is position management, which gets us, to be able to evaluate jobs fairly and equitably across a broader range. And I think that's clearly one of the goals that we have, and have talked with Michael Gardner and the team there about the need for this. And they're also in accord with us.
Shikleesi?
So I certainly understand the need to upgrade old systems to new systems, and I understand the complication of doing that and getting the best service that you need. My question is, where else does it exist, right? This is just one part of the agency. I know that Accessoride has these issues right now and have a contract in place. I'm a little skeptical of that actually working to upgrade their system. And, working with Craig and his team to talk that through. But what other things, and how, as taking Larry's lead as last time, how do we take a more comprehensive approach across the agencies to make sure that everything is up and working properly, and then eventually buying into a subscription service so our software is constantly updated, so like a Microsoft 365, that type of stuff.
Well, listen, there isn't a leader right now at the MTA that isn't thinking about data and analytics and how we get it faster and more accurate. I mean, from the marketing team to HR to finance. So I think we owe you that plan. But remember, the functions are just starting to be aggregated. You need a team on the field to put together a plan like that that's realistic and is going to be affordable and effective. So this is not meant to slow this board down. We encourage the board to keep pushing us as fast as we can go in this direction. But I think data and analytics is where the world has gone, and it is high time, and I applaud all of your efforts to support us to move as fast as we can along these lines.
But there is certainly opportunity in other places to be able to do these upgrades as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Any other questions? I'm going to make a motion to approve. Second?
I second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, there are all four procurement items are approved. Mark?
So I'll continue, Mr. Chairman. So there are no items for Metro North and Long Island Railroad. I'm going to move over to New York City Transit and MTA Bus. So New York City Transit has two procurement actions totaling $29,633,096. The first action is a $5.75 million non-competitive award to Simmons Machine Tool Corp. For the inspection, maintenance, and service of wheel truing machines, wheel boring machines, axle lathes, wheel lathes, shunters, and wheel presses. Simmons is an OEM and/or sole service provider for this specialized equipment. This is a multi-agency award supporting maintenance needs for New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North.
Want to do the second one, Kavesh?
Okay. The second action proposed is a $23.88 million award to Brookville Equipment Corporation to convert 4 R110A cars to 2 pump cars and 2 generator cars for flood resiliency. This is the result of a competitive RFP process and is funded by a federal grant.
Any questions on the committee? If not, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Both motions are approved.
Mr. Chairman, there are no items for bridges and tunnels, and there are no items for First Mutual Transportation Assurance Company. This concludes the procurements. Over to Mark Young. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavesh. The MTA consolidated financial statements and operational reports for June are in the book, beginning on page 47. With that having been said, we'll move to the real estate portion of the agenda. Christopher Nesachuk of MTA Real Estate is participating remotely.
Thanks, Mark. Mr. Chair, real estate has 8 action items for consideration and approval. There is 1 action item for MTA, a lease renewal with OTR Properties for the MTA Police Department office space at 24 South McQuestran Parkway in Mount Vernon, New York. The second item is for MTA Bridges and Tunnels, which is an 8th amendment to the license agreement with the National September 11th Memorial and Museum at the World Trade Center Foundation, Inc., to extend the foundation's term at the Battery Parking Garage in New York, New York. There are 2 action items for MTA New York City Transit. First, an acquisition of property interests for the Jamaica Bus Depot reconstruction project in Jamaica, New York. Second, an acquisition of property interests for Phase 2 of the 2nd Avenue subway project in New York, New York. There's 1 action item for MTA Metro North Railroad, a lease renewal with Gotham 42nd Street LLC for the Employee Assistance Program office space at 110 East 42nd Street in New York, New York. There are 3 action items for MTA Long Island Railroad. First, a license agreement with the City of Long Beach to design, build, and maintain a protective wall, a flood wall system in Long Beach, New York. Second, a license agreement with South Fork Wind LLC for the installation and maintenance of electrical and fiber cables along the right-of-way in Montauk, New York. And third, a license agreement with Boingo to install and maintain a cellular and Wi-Fi cable and supporting infrastructure and service on the Level A concourse at Penn Station, New York, New York.
Thank you. Are there any questions by any member of the committee on any of the real estate action items? If not, I'm going to make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I second, Larry.
All those in favor of the real estate action items? Any opposed? All the real estate action items have been approved.
Larry, can I make a short comment? I just want to highlight for the committee that with the assignment, the action you just took, at least to forward it to the board, to approve Boingo, who was selected by competitively for the Penn Station Wi-Fi, we're now continuing down the route to diversify the competition for the right to provide Wi-Fi and cell services in our space. Previously, it had been almost exclusively to Transit Wireless, and we've been trying to get diversity. This was a competitive selection, of course, but it did have that outcome.
Thank you.
The remainder of the real estate transactions are information items, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We're finished with our agenda, so I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Finance Committee's adjourned. Thank you.